We are celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday and his life. Martin Luther King was not just a beacon of light for America, recognized for his civil rights activism, which sought to bring American society closer to its true nature. He was and is an inspiration for the entire world. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 for his efforts to bring about positive change through nonviolent means. In 1977, Sri Chinmoy composed a number of songs in Dr. King's honor, which were performed at a program at the United Nations. Mrs. Coretta Scott King was the guest of honor and keynote speaker. We are very grateful to be able to perform one of these songs for you tonight, I Have a Dream. The words are those of Dr. Martin Luther King, excerpted from his historic I Have a Dream speech, which he gave on the steps of Lincoln Memorial to a gathering of over 250,000 people. The melody is by Sri Chinmoy. In this time of division, I Have a Dream is a song of hope, unity, and promise. I have a dream.
Sri Chinmoy penned the following tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and then set it to music. This was first publicly offered at the United Nations in 1977. The poem ran, "O Martin Luther King, soul love of oneness ring, your heart cry, God the dream, your soul smile, beauty supreme. Your selfless life's pure door transformed the weak and the poor. One man, one face, one race, from our Lord's fullness grace. Earth, heaven, together dance. King, King, in your victory trance." King, inspired by his own Christian beliefs, as well as the nonviolent activism of Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. King led with a oneness heart, nonviolent resistance against racial and other types of discrimination. On 28 October 1994, Sri Chinmoy and Coretta Scott King became the first two recipients of the Mahatma Gandhi Universal Harmony Award for their contributions to universal peace and harmony. The award was conferred upon them by the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, India's foremost and most respected cultural institution. At this award ceremony, hosted at the Hilton Hotel in New York City, Sri Chinmoy and Coretta Scott King had the honor to meet Ramaswamy Venkataraman, the former president of India, who took part in the ceremony of conferment by the Bhavan, along with other tidings from respected top dignitaries and Bhavanites of India, such as S. Ramakrishnan, C. Subramaniam, Vice President Pakivala, Vice President N. Gandhi. We are so grateful to the great and noble Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife and collaborator, Coretta Scott King, and to the noble Sri Chinmoy for their dreams, their efforts for a peaceful and more accepting world. May we emulate their wisdom. May we follow in their footsteps toward a better world. They left the world a better place for having been there. As Sri Chinmoy had said, quote, "The first step towards world transformation is self-transformation. May we become as noble as they." Thank you.
This beautiful I Have a Dream song premiered at the United Nations, as previously mentioned, at an event organized by Sri Chinmoy, with special guest Coretta Scott King and many UN ambassadors participating. Sri Chinmoy had been invited by UN Secretary General U Thant in 1970 to lead twice-weekly peace meditations and other programs for UN delegates and staff right here at UN headquarters in New York. And these activities continue under the auspices of Sri Chinmoy, the Peace Meditation, at the United Nations. It was our good fortune that Coretta Scott King was serving as a U.S. representative to the UN in 1977 for the main part of the General Assembly. We were honored to have her as keynote speaker for the commemoration on 29 November 1977, which was later aired on WPIX-TV on the actual Martin Luther King Day on 15 January 1978. In her closing remarks, Coretta Scott King thanked Sri Chinmoy and the Peace Meditation Group, as well as the many ambassadors and UN officials who had paid tribute to her husband. And she spoke about Martin Luther King's global message, which is ever more important today. And she said, "Your words have been indeed an inspiration to me, and to have heard what has been said by representatives of nations around the world who have understood Martin Luther King Jr.'s message and his great life commitment certainly inspires me personally to continue the struggle, which we are all a part of here, I feel, at the United Nations, to liberate those who are oppressed and to bring about a better quality of life for all people in this world, and certainly in our nation, where I am a citizen. I feel that I am a citizen of the world, as Martin Luther King Jr. was a citizen of the world." Thank you.
So I thought I would just share a few things about the spiritual foundations of the civil rights movement, as well as the day that I believe Martin Luther King became Martin Luther King as we know him today. Many people know that the civil rights movement was very much inspired by the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. He had these two major principles of ahimsa and satyagraha. Ahimsa, often translated as nonviolence, but really it's much broader than that. It's much deeper than that. It's the presence of love and peace and harmony among people. And satyagraha, sometimes translated as the force of truth or the zeal for truth. These were the two foundations of his movement. You didn't hear the American leaders actually using that terminology. You normally just heard of nonviolence. And so I often thought that the relationship between the civil rights movement and Gandhi's movement was kind of at an arm's length distance. We saw some things we thought were nice and we copycatted them here. But it turns out that the relationship was much, much deeper than what I had thought. The first brick in that edifice that I discovered over time of the relationship between the movements was when I first found out that Martin Luther King had actually traveled to India. He did so in 1959. There's a wonderful image you can find online of him and Coretta. She's in a sari, and they're meeting with the disciples of Gandhi. Gandhi was assassinated much earlier, but they're learning very directly those principles. And it turns out that was just the first brick. I then started discovering more and more individuals that had made the trip to India. Bayard Rustin, who was like Martin Luther King's right-hand man, he was responsible for organizing the March on Washington, where King gave his speech, the I Have a Dream speech. Bayard Rustin had spent several months in India learning the methods of Mahatma Gandhi. He was also the person instrumental in forming the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was the superstructure, the organization that kind of helped strategize the civil rights movement. And then I began to find other individuals as well. Reverend James Lawson, who was in India for 3 years as a Christian missionary, during that time studied Mahatma Gandhi. He basically wrote the book on nonviolence here in the U.S., civil disobedience and how to do it, working with organizations like SNCC, the Student Nonviolence Coordination Committee, that John Lewis headed at one time. So he was very steeped in that philosophy and very instrumental to formulating the methodology of the movement. Going all the way back to the 1930s, you had Howard Thurman, sometimes viewed as the father of the Martin Black Church. He traveled to India and had a conversation with Mahatma Gandhi. You can find some of that online today. It was Mahatma Gandhi who stated that it was maybe through the Negroes that the message of nonviolence might be disseminated throughout the world. So he was very much steeped in that philosophy as well. Benjamin Mays, kind of viewed as the intellectual father of civil rights movement, also, I think 1 year after Howard Thurman, also made a trip to India. So I began to find all these individuals that were so key to the movement who had really taken that journey east and were very much steeped on the philosophy, the spiritual philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, there's one particular individual that I think played a very significant role in helping Martin Luther King become who he ultimately became. In the 1940s, Martin Luther King was a student at the Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. And he was struggling with all those kinds of issues that students, especially theological students, deal with. How do you apply the philosophy of love that was so important to his Christian tradition to masses? I mean, he understood how it worked among a few individuals, but how do you apply it to masses to transform society? And he was having lots of doubts. He was reading Nietzsche and others, and he really wasn't figuring it all out by himself. Then one day he attends a lecture. It's at the Fellowship House in Philadelphia. Mordecai Johnson, who's the president of Howard University, has just returned from India. And he talks about Mahatma Gandhi, and he waxes eloquently. And a light bulb goes off in King's head. It's like, I think it's like it's an explosion. He suddenly realizes that this is what he's been searching for. He goes out, he buys half a dozen books on Gandhi, reads them voraciously, and I think this is the moment he became Martin Luther King as we think of him. A man not only with a mission, but with a methodology that would allow him to actually change America.
This is a pioneering public health advocate who was among the first physicians to use the power of the media to improve public health. He was awarded an honorary doctorate of science at the 52nd commencement of the SUNY Downstate Medical Center. He was born and raised in Brooklyn, graduated from Brooklyn College with a degree in biochemistry. He later went on to higher education, where he received a doctorate degree in internal medicine. As a leader, he was among the first to focus his efforts on addressing health disparities, largely in the Black communities. Dr. Dees was the first medical columnist for the New York Daily News, the chief medical correspondent for Fox Television's Emmy Award-winning McCleary Report. In the 1970s, Dr. Dees led a public health campaign against the Argo Starch Company to push for a change in labeling to prevent the poisoning of Black women, for which the FDA awarded him a special commendation. Dr. Dees has received numerous honors, and we are honored and thrilled to consider him as a true leader and friend. As you all may know, Dr. Dees has been a patron of Anand Brahma for decades. The girls know him very well, and I believe they consider him as family. And we are really honored to know him. We love him and we respect him very much. At this time, I would like to turn the mic over to Luntita, who will be saying a poem written by Dr. Dees. Thank you.
So, excuse that this just came through a couple minutes before our program started, so not much time to practice. And I'm sure I'm not going to do it justice in terms of how it really should be delivered. So this is a poem that Dr. Dees wrote for Dr. Martin Luther King, and it's entitled, I Want to Be My Own Man. God created man in his own image. I want to be my own man, don't want to be on loan, man. Can't stand the groan of man when I'm knocking at his door. Been through hell, my friend, never knew there was an end. That's why I could always grin, getting up off the floor. I'm not asking for your share. You don't even have to say you care. Just put the opportunity there and I'll even up the score. Got to be my own man, got to follow my own plan. And if you care, you'll give a damn by healing up the score. So come on and walk with me, come on and talk with me. Tell me how it feels to be free, even if you're poor. I want to be my own man, have to build with my own hands, so we can call this our land and live together evermore.